Great. Just a few reminders before we move on to the top of this, the top line of this meeting. One is many of you may have received an email from me about signing up for an EECBG ready box. Those are opportunities to engage with the E4 team and other state energy offices around comprehensive community energy planning, shared energy facilities managers, or upgrading critical municipal facilities to enhance energy resilience in disadvantaged communities. Again, it's just an opportunity to help inform some of the programs in a box that NASU and E4 have been developing, but really with the focus of helping states develop applications in any one of those three program areas. We've also confirmed a day and time for a follow-up discussion really focused on state allocation program design options and considerations for EECBG. That's taking place July 6th, 2023 from 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern time over Zoom. We'll be joined by Bettina Burgu of the Virginia Department of Energy, who will be sharing Virginia's approach for planning for the 40% of their EECBG allocation for state-directed programs and activities. And I'll plan to drop some links in the chat, but also we'll send an email after this meeting with the links for these programs. Today's focus is the subgrants under the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program. Just as a reminder, I've included the allocation formula under the Energy Information and Security Act for 2007, which decided on the allocations under EECBG. As you'll see, 68% go to local governments directly from DOE, the Department of Energy. 28% of EECBG funds are distributed to the 56 states and territories. 2% to tribes, and another 2% are held for competitive. Under the 28% that's going towards states, at least 60% of each state's allocation must go to units of local government in the state that are not already eligible for direct allocations from DOE, and up to 10% may be used for administrative expenses. Just wanted to put this out here so that you are aware of this overall formula and what we're talking about today. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Molly Cripps, the Director of the State Energy Office with the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. Molly, thanks for walking us through what you're working on for the EECBG subgrants. Again, folks, I hope you'll come with questions for Molly. She really knows her stuff on EECBG, and we're hoping to create as informational a space as possible for you all to learn from one another. So Molly, I'll turn it over to you and I'll pull up your slides too.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Sandy. And thank you for the invitation. Everyone who's joined us today, happy to take any questions at the end, or if you have any that come up after the fact, just send me an email. It's very easy. It's Molly with y.cripps, C-R-I-P-P-S @tn.gov. And Sandy, I'm not seeing the slides up. Just let me know when they are, because I'm on phone and I'm on computer, and that way I'll make sure that, okay, good deal.
All right, Molly, they should be up now.
Okay. All right, so go ahead and hit the next slide, Sandy, please. Tennessee's state allocation is $2.4 million. So while we're glad to have every penny of that, that is not a large amount of funding when you're looking at trying to do a competitive program. And in a minute on some other slides, you will see why we have landed here. What we're currently evaluating, and why I stress evaluating, is that we have not gotten full approval from our Department of Environment and Conservation leadership. We certainly have had their encouragement to evaluate this funding scenario, but we've got to get their formal approval and also governor's office as well before we put this in our proposal to, or rather the application to DOE. So evaluating that formula distribution, that would be to distressed counties. That is a ranking that is determined each year by the Appalachian Regional Commission. And I know a number of the states that I saw registered have areas of their states that are considered to be Appalachian Regional Commission, counties, etc. But that is what we rely on for distressed counties, and also another ranking at risk. But we wanted to focus on the distressed counties, and the definition that Appalachian Regional Commission has and how they go about determining which counties fall into the distressed counties ranking is based on the 3-year average of the unemployment rate, per capita market income, and the poverty rate. So we've been hearing a lot about what data sets are states going to take into consideration that may either overlap with what was considered to determine excuse me, DACs, or also has been taken into consideration by EPA for CGIST. So these are the 3 data sets that are taken into consideration by Appalachian Regional Commission to look at distressed counties. Again, it's that 3-year average, but they look at this on an annual basis. So if we limit our formula distribution to distressed counties only, then another approach we may also take is focusing on particular facility types or uses of those buildings for the retrofits or upgrades. For instance, county-owned hospitals. I know many of you who are on here have dealt with this over the last, decade, 2 decades, frankly, as we have seen county-owned hospitals just go to the wayside. Anything in rural areas has been particularly very hard hit. This means that our residents in those communities then are at risk for not getting the health care that they need, and also then potentially have to spend more money to access the healthcare they need because they've got to drive farther to it. So one way we can assist with that is financially aiding any remaining county-owned hospitals, which we do have a handful in Tennessee. Also, emergency management facilities, because we know that those are 24/7 facilities, schools, K through 12, while a number are not open in the summertime, they are utilized through, I shouldn't say open, they're not open throughout the week during the summertime while schools are on break, but they are still utilized in the summer, whether it be for a summer camp or for particularly, towards at-risk students, etc., and certain classes. So those are another particular building type that we are looking at. Also, community centers, particularly in our rural area. Think everything from this is where you might have a sewing club meeting on a Thursday evening to this is where community leaders gather to make decisions about how they should approach raising funds for a new playground for the community. But also, and oftentimes, these may function as emergency shelters as well. Schools do that, perform that function as well. So that's what we would like to stress here is, do we have buildings that might have multiple uses or 24/7 or that provide those lifelines to their community? Next slide, please, Sandy. And since we would like to have more funding to put toward the EECBG effort, we have proposed to DOE that Tennessee convert the maximum of 25% of our allocation of 9.6 million for grants. And so that's 2.4 million. So this would give us roughly 4.8 million and some change for EECBG. So the eligibility for grants and technical assistance, as I'm sure you all are well aware, under the RLF program, they have to comply with mandatory requirements for that program. So then we're going to make it so that any of our EECBG subrecipients would have to comply with those same requirements so that we can operate all of those subgrants the same. So that's primarily the energy audit that must be conducted on the front end, and that any upgrade or retrofit must be recommended in that audit. And for that funding to go toward commercial facilities owned by local governments, a few other things to consider. Is it actually a commercial building? Is it public? And does that community have fewer than 500 employees? So all of our distressed counties do. So we check that box as well. Next slide, please, Sandy. So how did we arrive at this, thinking that we would focus on our distressed counties? What about those municipalities in the distressed county? We first of all took a look overall at how many counties and municipalities we have in Tennessee. Like many other states, it's a lot. So even when you back out the number of communities getting direct funding from DOE under the EECBG program, if we were to try to spread something via formula to all of these, it would not go very far. And certainly we would not have much impact at all with those projects. Or if we limited it to just counties or municipalities that didn't receive direct funding, again, the number is so large, even with the additional funding we are putting toward this from RLF, or that we hope to put toward it. So being able to focus just on distressed counties means that our dollars can be more impactful, and that we can do a great number of projects that we can then use as examples for other communities. So we have a total of 95 counties in Tennessee. As I've already noted, we've got 10. Now, I will note that as of July 1st, that may reset. Every year we see a bit of movement, whether it be a distressed county moving to at-risk, or an at-risk moving back into distressed, or some of those coming off distressed and at-risk to transitional, or transitional to competitive. So we recognize that that might increase, but fortunately that will happen before our applications are due to DOE. Now, there are a number of other counties that are receiving direct funding. That number is also 10, and that total allocation is just under $1 million. Next slide, please, Sandy. Now, when we get to municipalities, the numbers, of course, are just even more daunting. 345 total municipalities in Tennessee. Of these, 32 are located in distressed counties. So we may still possibly do a combination of distressed counties and municipalities in distressed counties. But that, if we go with the numbers for 2023, that's up to 42. So again, it's just whittling down the impact for these communities. And if we focus at the county, we would be looking at facilities that would have an impact for all of the residents within the county, not just within a particular municipality. There are a total of 23 municipalities eligible for EECBG direct funding in the state, and that allocation is about 3.8 million. But if you look at the spread here of where these municipalities you can see as we go to our next slide, the disadvantaged census tracts and distressed counties and overlay. it gets quite busy trying to drill down and make sure that we are addressing disadvantaged communities, that we are taking CGEST into consideration. And we're also still, Cindy, working through, are there other data sets that we want to take into consideration as we determine how best to push those dollars out to the disadvantaged communities, because we still need to take into consideration things such as their population. Also, the energy burden within those communities. We also want to look at the number of local power companies that are within the county. That's more just from level setting for us. How many utilities are we going to have to engage with for each county? Some, it may wind up being just, 3 or 4. Others, it could wind up being, higher than that if they have the munis servicing their communities as well. And before I wrap, Cindy, I will note another reason why we are taking this approach. One, we have had discussions with TVA. No deals have been inked, but we have had discussions with TVA. Would they be able to assist us with the audits and also with the measurement and verification for these projects? We are still having those discussions. We are hopeful that they would be able to assist us in the form of no-cost technical assistance, as they have done with other programs. However, we do have the advantage of TVA blanketing the entire state of Tennessee. So that's what makes that easier for them, because they're then using TVA ratepayer dollars, Tennessee TVA ratepayer dollars there. And they, of course, have the relationships with the local power companies that they provide generation to in Tennessee. Generation 4 in Tennessee, and own the transmission lines that deliver that power to those communities. So more to come on that. Another angle we are also looking at, it is technical assistance focused, but I've got to get more information on this. I had misunderstood this particular program at first. Some of you are familiar with SCEP's C2C program. This was, I think, pushed out, maybe a few months ago. Different national labs are providing technical assistance through the C2C program, which stands for Clean Energy to Communities. C2C, I'm reading directly from their website here, provides 3 levels of engagement: in-depth technical partnerships, peer learning cohorts, and expert match, which can be short-term assistance with 1 or more technical experts to help address near-term clean energy questions or challenges. So through that process, DOE was looking to select 4 to 5 teams of local governments, electric utilities, and community-based organizations, looking to address potentially up to, and that was for the in-depth technical partnerships. For peer learning cohorts, they were hoping to engage approximately 100 communities, and for that expert match, 200 or so communities. I was operating the misunderstanding that that was an open call, but Sandy, I believe that is not the case. I just could not lay my hands on more recent announcements about the communities being engaged so far. So perhaps they are in the deliberation process, because if memory serves, I think that was just pushed out late winter or early spring. But Sandy, perhaps we can drop that link into the chat. The reason why I'm mentioning this is because I like this option, or these options of the technical partnerships, the peer learning cohorts, and the expert match. My hope is that if we do move this direction with just working with 10 different counties, that we are able to replicate the peer learning cohort across those counties, and also look at that either the in-depth technical partnership or the expert match aspect of it. So I am meeting with Oak Ridge National Labs next week. They are one of the participating labs. under C2C, just so that I can learn more and have a better understanding of, will there be another open call? If so, when might that be? Is it something that would line up with our timing for EECBG such that it would be worthwhile for Tennessee State Energy Office to apply on behalf of the distressed counties perhaps, or if we need to examine whether it would be possible to work with ORNL separately and utilize some of Tennessee's administrative funding to provide that technical assistance for these communities. So just another idea that we're taking into consideration, but I do encourage you all to take a look at that. It may be something that will pair well with what you're planning for EECBG as well. Sandy, thanks again for the invitation. Happy to take any questions today, or on the back end. Last slide has a bit more contact information generally for the office. Thanks again. Hope everybody has a great rest of the day.
Thanks so much, Molly. Great. Well, I know I had a few questions, but I did want to open it up to anyone around the Zoom room. Any reactions, questions, ideas you'd like to run past Molly, since we have such great expertise with her. And in the meantime, I'll also drop some of those links into the chat. And Molly, I love the idea of trying to coordinate with the RLF funds and with the C2C.
Yeah.
Like you're helping thread some needles that might otherwise be siloed.
Yeah. And I'll say another advantage to, and this is a selfish one, I'd readily admit that, by reducing the numbers that we are potentially engaging with, that's less time we're also going to have to spend educating folks about BABA, Davis-Bacon, NEPA, and state historic preservation. During ARA, we had, oh goodness, literally, I think we had over 200 EECBG subrecipients, and we at least had 150. That was a lot of educating. And even though some of them use the same consultants, whether it be through a development district or, their, community technical or county technical assistance service, that is where a lot of our time on the administrative end was dedicated. And I'd love to see dollars, instead of going toward the administrative side, then be able to be utilized for projects. So that was another reason for choosing that.
Thanks, Molly. That actually segues perfectly into one of my questions about how, do you have any advice for other states about how to approach the Buy American requirements? I think we all recognize that there are challenges, supply chain, and accessing the technologies, and especially in distressed communities, I imagine maybe they're not always prioritized for the technology deployment. So I'm just curious about how your office is approaching that, and yeah, whether there's any tips or advice for others.
Oh, gosh. Well, since it's having to run across grid, IIJ, SCP, and now regular flavor SCP, I will say this: we have been fortunate so far. We have not had any projects that have triggered it as of yet. So we are still working through exactly what this is going to look like for us. We do know that how we are going to frame it is that we will be requiring certain assurances is not the right word, but vendor certifications perhaps is a better term, on the front end before procurement is finalized. So obviously, we are all having to step through, whether it be at the local government level, state level, federal level, competitive procurements. And within those procurements, whether it be an invitation to bid, RFP, what have you, we're all making folks aware BABA applies, and here's what BABA is. It's then incumbent upon the vendor to not just tell us that they comply, but to prove to us that they comply. So we are working through what all we're going to require for that proof. it's not just going to be a letter saying that they comply. We found during ARA that those are simply, well, in some instances, fabrications, I will be blunt. Two, without more detail, you can't tell if some of these folks are confusing BABA with, are they looking at, frankly, the Buy America requirement from ARA back in the day, because that's what they were familiar with. So without going into greater detail, you aren't going to be able to discern whether that is the case. So it will be a combination of, again, vendor certifications, assurances that we do receive from the subrecipient, that not only are they going to be turning around this information to us, but they are going to continue to work with the vendor. It's all about letting folks know when a red flag has been raised, and let's help each other figure out how we can address that. If you have a vendor who thought they had something that was Buy America or BABA compliant, we know that this happens as well. And it turns out, oh goodness, it was not. And then you're already under contract with them, and how do you move forward with that? So we are working through what those checklists, again, vendor certifications and subrecipient assurances will look like. And we're probably several months away, Sandy, from having that together. We'll also note that as far as supply chains are concerned, all the states that I've been engaged with over the last 18 months since IIJA passed, we have been raising our hand, telling DOE folks that we would love it if they could help us figure out where we may have issues with supply chain. Oftentimes we may not know until we are working through a project. I'm not aware of DOE having said that they would be able to assist us in that regard. So I don't know if that's an opportunity for us to follow up with MESC and ask if there's anything that they intend to push out that just gives us, I guess, maybe is a state of play, if you will, what they are aware of, where we have had the scene, or rather where projects folks have seen issues over the last year. So with that, I would say it's going to be reliant upon your own procurement professionals within your state agency or at the local government level to understand what those procurement pain points have been. We've all been hearing it as well for national electric vehicle infrastructure. But I would say, leaning on those procurement professionals. For a lot of these projects, though, also the utilities. And then I would say also checking with NASIO affiliates, frankly. They have been a great resource for some of the projects we've had in years past. And also I know from some of our local governments that are doing projects just to have a better understanding of what has a longer lead time that used to not before COVID or before certain Buy America requirements came into play. So sorry, I don't have more concrete answers, but that's those are my recommendations.
No, thanks, Molly. I think those are great recommendations. And I too have not seen much from the federal agencies, but I think about a week or two, Blue Green Alliance put out a map of clean energy domestic manufacturing facilities.
Okay, great.
And I don't think it gets to the level of granularity that you might need as state energy offices, but it does have a helpful map, and then as well as an analysis of how much each sort of critical supply chain, how much US production there actually is. And so there's a spreadsheet that provides that assessment too. And I think it's either none, moderate, or limited in most of these supply chains, but some of them do have some pretty good domestic production already. Pat, I see your hand is raised. Go ahead.
Sorry. Thanks, Molly. This is terrific. And if I missed it at the beginning, there's so much information. But could you tell us a little bit about how the formula will work in terms of how much money each of the 10 distressed communities would get?
Yeah, we have not landed on that yet, Pat. What we're looking at now is what other data sets do we need to take into consideration? First and foremost, we're looking at the Appalachian Regional Commission's determination, knowing that that might change as of July 1st. And then what other data sets do we want to build onto that? Others that are already taken into consideration for DACs, others that, and we know we will be required to rely on CGEST as well. So we're doing a gap analysis. What's missing is an obvious one, which would not be in any of those data sets, in its total population. And then we know that we want to look at energy burden as well. So that remains to be seen, but we're going to take all of those into consideration. And we may see that it doesn't need to be weighted for any of the other factors beyond total population. But we could see that something's going to shift a few counties a bit higher. And I have a feeling for some, it might be energy burden, particularly those that are in the Southwest Tennessee. I believe they are in a different climate zone.
Thanks.
So
that's
You're
really
welcome.
helpful. Just what you're thinking about. It's great.
Yep.
Great. Any questions from the crowd? You did get a chat. Great outline, Molly. So thanks for sharing.
You.
And congrats on the good work. We know even with more than a month before the application deadline, usually that's quite a bit ahead of time. One question that came to mind during your talk, Molly, is whether you've been working with or trying to coordinate with any of the localities that will be receiving the direct funds. I imagine maybe some of the larger cities. Are you trying to, overlay the funds in any way specifically, or are they just kind of separate programs?
They're separate programs, but we are communicating with primarily those that we always call the large four. That would be, Memphis, Shelby County, that's one, Metro Nashville, that covers Davidson County, but they have a metro government there, and then Knox County, Chattanooga as well. And several of the folks that will be operating those programs who weren't there during ARA have reached out to get with Angela McGee, our Deputy Director for Operations, who oversaw EECBG during ARA, and fortunately is going to be doing it for us again. So we're coordinating in that respect, just making sure that folks have what they need before they submit to DOE. And then also DOE has reached out to us for those communities that have not said, hey, we're going to apply at this point, or responded to DOE. Frankly, there have been a few of those. And so we have been working with DOE to get them newer contacts, et cetera, to make sure that they reach out. But we did some initial outreach when the allocations were pushed out. And then again, within the last few weeks, so that those communities know we're here to help. And it may just be for some pointing them in the direction of technical assistance providers within the state. Others, walking them through. They haven't had to prepare these types of budgets before because of their, what their role typically is. So that's really what our focus has been. It's been more about accessing and making sure we're pulling down the dollars in Tennessee than it is with overlapping programs at this point. And I will say, I've got to give a nod to TVA as well. They have been in touch with these communities too. It's my understanding that they've been trying to do that in the other states covered by TVA. So if there are any other TVA states on the line that you would like to connect with the TVA folks and make sure that they're getting in touch with the EECBG communities in your area receiving direct funds, just give me a holler and I'll connect you.
Thanks, Molly. That sounds great. I'll do one final call for any questions from the other states that are on the line. Or if you'd like to share where you are in your EECBG application process, we have time to work through it, and we're always available to offline to chat further. All right. This might have been more of a learning session. Oh. Hey, Julie, thanks for the question. Any rumors of waivers up to 250K for BABA for EECBG? I have not personally. Oh, Molly, go ahead.
I will say I have not heard about this for EECBG. However, Sandy, there is the draft waiver. I'm not going to get this correct. The draft waiver for grid formula that is coming out, that is encouraging. So I think that it released last week, or is it being released this week for comment? And so, of course, I think that is dictated somewhat by the fact that those projects can be quite costly. But it is encouraging to see that another office within DOE is doing that. And so we have raised this again with SCEP as recently as the regional meetings that NASIO is hosting. I know that the Southeast, we had ours a couple of weeks ago, and we raised this with Henry McCoy directly again. And I think that David has in the most recent meetings that have occurred since then as well. So fingers crossed, but I haven't heard anything specific for EECBG, but hopefully again, with grid deployment having taken these steps, maybe SCEP will be next.
Thanks. That's helpful. And Maria adds, also heard it was considered for HER programs. I assume that's the home energy rebate programs. But Maria, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Great. And we will try to track that down on NASIO's end too. If we hear anything, especially relevant to EECBG, you'll be the first to hear from me. And we'll continue to track that for the other programs as well.
Hey, Sandy, can I put in a plug for something?
Yeah, of course.
All of y'all should have received notification now of the NASIO annual meeting in October. For those of you, if there are anyone on the line that has not attended before, please put this on your calendar. It's going to be in Portland, Oregon. And Sandy, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure if the hotel block is up yet. But the dates are available on the NASIO webpage, and we hope that you will add it to your calendar. And we're currently working on that agenda right now, and we know that there will be representatives from E4 with us to talk about the programs in a box. And then also lots of opportunities for you to get together with folks either in your region. We'll have the regional meetings again, as we typically do at the national meetings, but then also to have sidebars with folks. And if need be, we are happy to work with you. When I say we, the board and NASIO, if there are little groupings that you would like to pull together outside of the meetings, just to get a handful of other states together so that we can share more information. So just wanted to throw that out to folks, Sandy, in case they didn't have it on their calendars.
Yeah, thanks so much, Molly. That's a great plug. I'll just reiterate, the dates are October 16th to 19th in Portland, Oregon at the Hilton Portland downtown. We'll have more information on the hotel room block, I think, in the next week or so. Really
awesome.
So hopefully that'll help everybody with travel. And if you have any sessions that you'd like, or ideas, topics that you'd like to have elevated at the conference, don't hesitate to reach out. Molly is a great representative on our board, but also NASIO staff. We're happy to help float that over to the folks that make the decisions about our conference agenda. All right, and thanks, Emily, for responding to Jeff's question in the chat. Jeff, if you need help tracking down anyone at DOE to get you that information, feel free to send me a quick note, and we can work through the EECBG lines as well. All right, any final questions, comments, chats for the good of the order? All right, well, again, Molly, thank you so much for sharing Tennessee's approach to this. We know it's a complicated but very impactful program. So we're excited to continue. And again, we'll be meeting again on July 6th with Bettina Burgu of the Virginia Department of Energy. She's been focused on the 40% state-directed part of the allocation, and we'll be talking a little bit about the program design that she has in the works and some of the rationale behind it. So again, feel free. Oh, and Pat, feel free to jump in. Oh, was that maybe a Pat, are you trying to speak or?
There's a question in the chat about, do we need an insurance letter, or is that not necessary for state applications?
The assurance letter for the Davis-Bacon Act. I believe I did see that in the EECBG program hub, but I'll double check. Thanks, Pat.
And there was another one I saw it come across briefly about, Sandy, if you could address match.
Oh, yep. Is anyone requiring a match for applicants to the state funding pool?
I'll note for Tennessee, we did not require match under ARA. Two things I liked about it. One, we didn't have to track match for EECBG. Two, you know, given that we're focusing on our distressed counties, and while I know it'll, you know, maybe make projects go a bit further, we are not going to propose that to our leadership. I think that if you are a state that has a larger bucket of funds, and you are not limiting it to your version of distressed counties, that something even along the lines of 10 or 20, but I would not go beyond that, frankly, just because of you'll just be cutting out the number of communities that you can work with. Other things that we took into consideration before making that determination, at least at the state energy office level, we looked at where these communities fell on the ability to pay index. Some of you all who work also with your state revolving funds, with divisions of water resources, may be familiar with that, or community development block grants. So I think that is something that is taken into consideration by both of those programs as to what those communities will pay in terms of interest for loans funded by those programs, and or how much they may be able to receive in loan forgiveness. So just another thing you may want to take into consideration.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Molly. And I am just taking a look at the EECBG formula grant application instructions. And Marty, I do believe that the authorized applicant letter is required. It's listed in Appendix A as under the checklist for the grant applications. And I think that's because the statute doesn't specifically say state energy offices. I think it needs to be like an authorized agency. And so I think that might be the spirit of the authorized applicant letter. I'm happy to find out more though, and follow up with you offline. Or if anybody else knows, feel free to jump in. Great. All right, well, thanks everyone for this great discussion. Any final questions? Okay, we'll hope to see you July 6th for the discussion on the state-directed allocation. But in the meantime, hope everybody has a wonderful July 4th. And I know it's a really busy time, so best of luck with some of the other applications that are looming around. And please keep an eye out for a follow-up email. I'll include some of the links that were shared today and and some more clarity on the authorized applicant letter. Again, thank you so much, Molly, and thank you all for the great discussion. Hope you have a great day.
You're welcome. Thanks for the invitation. Thanks to you and E4, Sandy. I much appreciate all the attention you're putting toward EECBG.
Yeah, of course. Happy to.
Have a great rest of the week.
Take care,
Bye,
everyone.
y'all.
Bye.
Thank you.